Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Volt MX Go deep dive webinar on First Touch, Design Import, and Domino REST API. I'm Adam Gartenberg, Director of Product Management for Volt MX Go, and I'm joined today by Ryan, Matt, Neil, and Rusty, who are from our outstanding engineering team and are responsible for building these capabilities. They're going to take you through all the details and demonstrate how they all work. We also have others from our engineering team on the line with us to answer your questions. Please use the question box off to the side to ask your questions anytime throughout the webinar, and we'll answer them later in the session. This is the third session in an ongoing series of webinars we'll be hosting to give a deeper dive into all the capabilities of Volt MX Go. We have replays available for the last two if you missed them, and we hope you'll come back for the upcoming sessions. Please use and share the QR code with your colleagues to register. Before getting into today's deep dive, let's take a quick look at Volt MX Go as a whole. Volt MX Go was created to help you extend and modernize your Domino applications, or to allow you to create entirely new apps connected to your Domino backend. It allows you to make use of all of the multi-experience capabilities of Volt MX, including creating native mobile apps, tablet, desktop, and wearable apps, while also bringing in the latest technologies like AR and VR or AI chatbots. It also lets you easily integrate with other backend systems across your enterprise, and of course includes a license for all the capabilities of Domino CCB. It also lets your Domino developers bring their code into Volt MX applications, while also allowing you to tap into the abundant pool of JavaScript developers available in the marketplace today, maximizing and future-proofing your skills investments. And lastly, you can do all of this while automating and saving up to 60% of the labor needed to modernize your apps, reducing the cost, time, and risk involved in doing so. And these savings come from the capabilities that we've started introducing with Volt MX Go version 2.0. The Domino adapter directly connects Volt MX back to your Domino deployment, allowing for full data services and aggregation, and making it a full citizen alongside all of the integrations possible in Volt Foundry. We're going to hear a lot today about First Touch and Design Import. As the name implies, First Touch will help you get started with MX Go, and Design Import lets you import your forms, fields, and views from Domino into Volt MX, making them immediately actionable since they're already connected back to Domino. And lastly, Volt Formula lets you bring your act formulas and Domino application logic into Volt MX, making it easy for both Domino developers and those with JavaScript experience to work on extending your Domino apps into Volt MX. So with that, I will turn it over to Rusty to start taking you through the First Touch experience.
Okay, thank you, Adam. All right, so what exactly is First Touch? As Adam mentioned, it's going to quickly it's designed to quickly get you up and running so you can start to learn to create Volt MX Go applications with Domino as a backend. We provide a simplified setup in Foundry for our sample application, which is a recipes application. And the sample application is going to demonstrate how to use Domino authentication and access controls, how to access data in your Domino database, and also with a single app, how to create both a web and mobile interface. A couple of notes before you get started with First Touch. First Touch does require OAuth is configured on the Domino REST API server. And then also there's a First Touch Recipes NSF, which is available with your Volt MX Go license. You'll need to download and deploy that to your Domino server. If you're using our container installs, which are in our product documentation, all of this setup is automatically done for you. But if you have a standalone install, you will need to do these steps before you attempt to use First Touch. So let's get started with the demo of the First Touch install on Foundry. So the first time you log into Foundry, you'll notice the First Touch banner across the top. There's a Getting Started button. And then on the left navigation, there's also, you can access the Getting Started button. But you're just going to enter in the URL and credentials for your Domino REST API server And then First Touch Installer is going to configure everything for you. It's going to configure Domino REST API. It's going to configure the services and Foundry that the sample recipes app is going to need to access your Domino data. And it's also going to deploy the web interface for the First Touch Recipes app. And so when the First Touch install completes, you'll be able to launch directly into the Recipes app and start exploring the app. And then you can launch right in, sign in with your Domino credentials. This is using the OAuth that you set up. And you can start exploring the Recipes app immediately. If you want to come back, you can click on Getting Started again. There's an uninstall option, and then you can also relaunch the First Touch Recipes app if you want to do further exploration. So that bit went by pretty quickly, but let's kind of take a closer look at what the things were that were configured as part of the First Touch install on Foundry. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to the Domino REST API Administrator Console and look at what's configured there. Under your schemas, you're going to see there's a First Touch recipe schema, and it has been everything's been configured to allow the application to access data in your Domino database. Also create a scope, and then lastly, we will create a application with the ID and secret. If we go back to the Foundry console and look at the services, there's an OAuth service which points to your Domino REST API, and there's the client ID and secret are using the application ID and secret in the Domino REST API. For the object services, you'll see that we have imported all the fields from the Domino database, and this is going to allow, object services allows the applications to access the data in the Domino database. So next, my colleague Neil is going to take you through some more details of the First Touch Recipes app.
Thank you, Rusty. Before we get into the VoltMX code, I wanted to give a quick 1-minute demo of the First Touch Recipe app for those who haven't seen it yet. The features we'll be seeing here are the ones I have listed on the left, but I'll talk you through it as we go. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to type the word lemon up in the search bar. That will find all the recipes that have either lemon in the recipe title or in the recipe itself. Next, we're going to jump to a recipe card. We clicked on the picture and it expands the card. And now we're going to do a simple edit. So we're going to change the name of the recipe and change the prep time. Finally, we'll go down to the bottom of the form and hit Update to save the form. Okay, now we're going to go back in and do a delete. So you can do operations like edit and delete directly off of the recipe card. And you can see after a confirmation, we've deleted the recipe. Okay, so that's it for our demo. And let me take you a little bit into the background. So let's look a little bit at the code. So next, I'd like to give you just a very high-level overview of how First Touch is built in VoltMX Go. But here we're looking at the list of forms used in First Touch. And these forms perform two very important functions. They're used to gather data from the user for things like the ingredients list for a new recipe, but they also provide the basic structure and layout of the user interface. One of the cool features about VoltMX is you can build up very complex forms like our main form using common components like a header and footer or search bar. These common components can be used on every page in your app and provide a great deal of reusability and common code. So let's, this is what we're seeing here is the edit form that we saw earlier. during the demo. The great thing about VoltMX is it provides a very intuitive user interface that allows you to easily place fields on the page and resize and position them as you like. You don't need years of HTML experience to build a working form like this. And again, we're taking advantage of a number of common components here, like the header bar and search bar. So finally, let's talk about controllers. While a form provides the structure, it's the form's controller that provides the functionality. So whenever a button is clicked on a form, a corresponding controller method is called to perform the action. Now, it might be a little hard to see on the screen, but what we're looking at is a controller code snippet that goes off to a Domino REST API and fetches the actual list of recipes. If you look at this first method, you see the getObjects line. That's going off to the back end and doing an object-oriented search. And you can see it's very straightforward. So you have the object you wish to fetch, and then just two other parameters. One is the callback on success, the other the callback on failure. If you go down to the next method, it's the callback on success, and all it does is call another method to display the recipes. So here we've got just 7 lines of code that go out to the backend Domino database. They fetch all the recipes, they parse them, they format them, and display them on the screen. They're very easy to get a very complex action out of a very few lines of code. And that's all I really wanted to talk about. So let me hit next. And now I'd like to turn it over to Ryan from our middle lab to talk about the Domino REST API.
All right, so very awesome stuff right there, Rusty and Neil. And so now we're gonna go and have a look at Domino REST API. So next. So this is the agenda. So we're going to discuss about Domino REST API's overview, and then I'll be showing some quick demo, then showing some of its features, and lastly, a special announcement on the admin UI. So this is our mission statement. So the key point here is keeping the barrier to entry low. So an example of this is that if you don't have a Domino server to test on, you can use your Notes client to do your own development. And then Domino REST API achieved a number of points. So what's important for us are the implementation of open standards and keeping the barrier for entry low. So it has multiple use cases. We have spa. So by the way, it's not the place where you go to relax. It's a single page application. So later, I will show you an example of this with a demo. And of course, Volt MX Go applications uses Domino REST API, like you can use Domino REST API. Then for the demo, let me just hit play. So here, we are in a Notes application called Equipment Request. And let's say, because I want to be efficient, I requested for a Tesla 3 and a MacBook. So this allows me to code while on the road. So this request here is part of an approval workflow. So shortly, we're going to take a look at the single page application we've built called Approval. So after the request got submitted, this should now show us the Domino REST API's homepage. And amongst the list of applications, we will go to the one labeled Approval Spa. right here. Then let's log in, and displayed in here is the request that we've submitted earlier. And in the background of this approval application, it uses one of Domino REST API calls to retrieve all depending equipment requests. And what we've opened up just now is the Postman. So if you're unfamiliar with it, it's simply a development tool that helps to build, design, and modify APIs. So in this case, we're going to use it to test some Domino REST API calls. And now I'm currently hovering at the same request that the approval application uses to fetch the pending requests. And once we hit send, below we get a response that should be the same as the request shown in our approval application. So, yep, it's the same. And let's get into approving this request. So we have 3 approvers: Gordon Moore, Steve Wozniak, and Andy Bechtoldheim. And since this is a demo application, we have turned off the access control. So now we can impersonate these persons, which feels good. So let's get into approving one by one. All right. And since there are no more additional approvers, this final approval should now make me a Tesla owner. All right, no more pending approvals. So let's check in our Postman request to see if it matches. All right, hit send, and then there. Now it's an empty, it's now show an empty response. And one last thing that I want to show you is that the same as the notes application earlier, we can also make an equipment request using another Domino REST API call. So in here, I have a new equipment request that asks for a new MacBook, a pencil, and a Synology NAS. And once again, it's my request. So let's hit send. And good. We got an okay response. And now, if we go back and refresh our approval application here, we should be able to see the fresh requests. So there. And that's it for the demo. And now, let's talk about some of Domino REST API features. So here, we have the Barbican. So that is what we call to the refinement of Domino security. So we have a document mode that uses @formulas to define who can see which field. So for example, in a typical notes application for approval, the cost can only be set by the requester and the status can only be set by the approver. And this can be defined simply by @formulas. And in addition, the Barbican makes sure that the fields you don't want to be exposed are not exposed. As for the data types, so we put a lot of effort in converting notes data types to JSON and vice versa. So shown here are some of the examples. Now, in Domino REST API, we spent quite some time to make sure that all of these back and forths, all of that conversions works as expected. And by the way, if you're unfamiliar with JSON, so it is a very popular way of exchanging data between a server and a web application. So as it has an extremely simple format and very efficient in terms of processing. So up next, Domino REST API also has field groups. So a typical challenge we faced and we solved is that in a notes application, very often we have multiple fields that form a logical group. And this can be quite confusing. So we took care of that by using field groups, which makes it easier for properties to be associated with each other, thus making your data more digestible, and easily read. And now, let's talk about some of the terminologies we used: schemas, scopes, and applications. Simply, schemas define what is there. Scope, a terminology that we borrowed from OAuth, is the visibility of what's visible outside. And lastly, application is the definition for an OAuth access to the database. To add to that, Volt MX Go interfaces with Domino REST API as an application. So let's go to the next slide. In Domino REST API admin UI, you can define a variety of configurations with ease. So let's say you can also do that by writing your own Domino REST API calls. But if you're lazy like me, just click through everything using Domino REST API admin UI. And shown here is the link of Domino REST API's documentation if you want to find out more. One more thing. So for this special announcement, we will be open sourcing Domino REST API admin UI soon, and that will be published on the HCL open source website. Well, I hope this brief presentation gets you excited for Domino REST API as much as we are. So there are definitely more that I want to show you, but if we do that, we're going to be stuck here for a while. So I'll hand it off to Matt, and let's take a look at design import.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it. So design import is something that's pretty important for people that are going from looking at their Domino applications and trying to put them into the Volt MX Go framework. So I want to go ahead and go forward here and look at what we do for design import. So what we do is we look at Domino. We actually import the forms, views, and fields from your Domino application. We reference those in the object services within Foundry to communicate with back and forth with Domino. We also allow for you to use the Volt MX widgets in your applications to modernize those or to enhance those applications into things that are not necessarily available in Domino, but are available in Volt MX. So quick run through here. This is a basic app on Domino. So we're going to go through this Big Oak app and just see what we have here. This is the designer of the forms that we have here. Again, I'm going to go through all these things in more detail in the next slides, but we're running through this wizard here. The wizard basically imports your apps from Domino through the Domino REST API and the Domino adapter to allow them to be accessible and usable inside of the Volt MX applications. You can use the Volt MX application. Here we get a construct that's actually built by the design import, and then we have a kind of a finished product after the fact. So this is the basis of it, and then we get a finished product that we can actually go through. I'll show you some of the modifications here just in a moment as we go through this a little bit further. So looking at the wizard itself, when you start the wizard, you can actually associate an application with that in the Data Services panel, which is listed number 1 there. At this point in time, we have no linked app. We can use an existing app, or we can create a new application. The new application will be based off of your Iris workspace, that name, and it will dynamically create that inside of Foundry. If we use an existing application, we're presented with the list of applications that are actually on the Foundry application now. In that Foundry server, you can associate those with your wizard. If you do that, we can see that that would be associated with the particular wizard, with the particular application in the wizard. If you choose a new application, the first thing that you're presented with is a configuration of your identity service. This identity service assimilates to what's in the Domino REST API. So you'd enter your Domino REST API URL, the scope, which needs to be $data in this particular version, the client ID and client secret, which was shown previously. Also a service name, which will be appended to all of your services. The next thing you'll do is you'll select the existing identity service, which you would have just created on the new application, or would be existing for a similar application that you actually had for existing things that you actually had in your Foundry server. You'll have to authenticate via your Domino REST API credentials, which is your Domino credentials, through OAuth 2. Once that's done, you actually are asked for your Foundry Identity service to be used in your application. This is what the user will use inside the application to authenticate. This would be their Domino REST API credentials. Once that's completed, you're selecting a scope. With the $data, we're selected with all the scopes, as was previously noted as well, with scopes and schemas. Scopes are the available outlets from an outside perspective to get into the Domino REST API. We're going to go ahead and select a big oak scope here. Once we do that, we are presented with the forms and views that we actually have and agents that were selected inside of the schema inside the Domino REST API. You can select or deselect any of these to import into your application that you're going to create on the Domino REST, on the Iris application. Again, you can see this with what's in the management center in the Domino REST API for your schemas. So you can select or deselect any particular fields and or forms and views that you wish to be presented in this particular viewpoint. Once that's completed, you are presented with a summary screen of what you've selected. And then the build application actually goes ahead and grabs all of the stuff that you've selected and dynamically creates an object service application that is uploaded to Foundry and built there. And then we pull those things down from the Foundry server to build your application. Once the application is completed, you are presented with an application done screen, and you can see the synopsis of what you've actually built. You can see the forms, views, and the app forms. If there are any errors, you can look at those specifically on this screen. Also, you can open up a external view of that to go into more detail for analysis. We actually create some application-specific forms here for navigation and other utilities that are used in the application. Once you click done, you are shown a storyboard of what you've actually built inside of Iris, as well as a design view here of what you see. Again, this is a basic view of the construct what we built from those applications. Let me go into some modifications you can make to make these more presentable to your end users. So in here, I want to update the login screen essentially for what we actually have. This is the basic login screen. So I want to go ahead and I want to create a flex container here, and I want to add that flex container to that particular form that we see and add an image to that. These images, I want to go ahead and import those in the assets. So go into assets and select a couple of golf course pictures for our Big Oak application, which is a golf course management and sales utility. So I import those particular images successfully, and I go in and modify the image that's there to one of those particular base images. Again, sorry guys, it's a little choppy, but we'll go ahead and we'll set that scale mode to fit dimensions and make sure it's all accessible on that particular form. We can bring these different flex containers forward, which we can do inside of Iris to bring the Z-index forward from that. We'll go ahead and delete this icon and move this button down. So this is some of the customizations you can do inside of Iris, which is pretty simple and it basically click to talk stuff. So move this down to the bottom of that particular flex container and move that flex container down a little bit in our application. we want to make sure that we know what this application is actually doing. So we are going to add a label here. That label, we're going to change the name of that to Big Oak Customers. And it's not very well visible. So we'll go into the skins here and change the actual text colors and attributes of that particular label itself. So I want to go ahead and make this a little bit of a green color. And it's still not that accessible to see, so I want to make sure that the background is set. So around that label, I can set a background to that inside of the Volt-MX Iris framework. So I'll make this kind of a grayish green color, and I'll make the opacity a little bit more so that it kind of comes out to the customers. We can change things like the borders from rounded corners and angled corners. So we're going to make this a rounded corner, as well as set a blur factor that kind of meshes that into the background. So the button still is a little bit obtrusive, so I'm going to go ahead and change this button. Now this is kind of important. We can change this button in the skins here with everything else that you can change in the skins. I'm going to change this to a green color, but we also want to make sure that we name that skin something we can use later on in our applications. So going on to the other panels, we can actually use the same skin and make it the same buttons, the same type of skins that we have. So after we log in, we're moved forward to the dashboard container. So this is going to run through real quick here, but I'm going to make some dashboard modifications. So again, I'll add a background image and go ahead and set some of the views, some of the labels to the colors we had. We can actually grab colors from the particular one we had before, add those into the other attributes of the widgets that we have here, and actually use the reference of the deep dive button that we actually created in the first one. That automatically creates all of these buttons to be the same type of look and feel that we had before. You can go ahead and use Control-Z to go backwards. You can go back and forth with some of these attributes and make these things the way that you'd like for them to be. We can go ahead and add another thing here that we'll go into the next video here in just a moment. That's more Volt-MX specific. So we're going to add a chat bot reference here to something that's outside of the actual application and kind of bring that into the application. So let's go ahead and take a look at that real quick. So the chatbot button here we just added is something that wasn't there to begin with in the application. So we go into the forms of Volt-MX Iris and create a new form. We'll call this form the golf chatbot and create that form here. It's still vanilla, so I want to go ahead and grab the same look and feel we had in the other applications of the flex header, the breadcrumb trail, as well as the container. We'll go ahead and copy those particular flex containers and paste them into what we had there in the chatbot form that we just created. So now we have a construct. There's a number of widgets that you can add to your applications that are included in Volt-MX. What we're going to do is we're going to try to go ahead and reach out and grab an external resource. So we want to add the browser widget here. With that browser widget, we want to make sure we have it to the left-hand side. We also want to make sure that we don't cover up the top what we had. So we're going to have 20% from the top. We want to make sure this is full screen, so a total of 100%. Want to make 80% of the height of that particular widget, of the browser widget. We can change the properties of that particular browser widget by editing the master data. What we want to do is we want to pull in a chat bot from an external resource. So we'll pull in an iframe and we'll use that source here of something that's external to our application, external to Domino, but still available to our application. So I'll go ahead and I'll go grab that resource and I'll pop that into the source here. And now we're actually going to have our chatbot widget included on this page. However, it's not accessible from the dashboard. So I want to go back to the dashboard and I want to make sure that that button is really active. So one of the beautiful features of UltimX is the low code editor. So within low code, you can do things without actually making code, but kind of clicks back and forth and moving things around. So if I click on that button, I can actually go to the action here. I can pull up the action editor and I can just say, let's navigate to this particular form. So once that's done, this should be a working application. So if I do a preview on this application, I can load this application, run this, all from the constructs of Iris. I'll build that application and I'll go to it in a browser. Once I see it in that browser, I can be referenced to access my Domino credentials and I'm successfully logged in. Now I can see when I click on the chatbot button that I actually have the chatbot accessible inside of my application. So another feature of UltimX Iris is you code once and you have it in multiple channels. So here we can see that we can actually add another channel. So we imported to responsive web, but we can add the mobile tablet channels. I added mobile here. I'm selecting my fields here in my forms that I've created from the import. I'm copying those particular forms and I'm importing those based on a paste into the mobile application. Once that's done, I can see those are all pasted into mobile application and I can see that I now have an actual mobile application from the import that I actually created from Domino. So Domino can import into a responsive web and then you can move that over to other channels as well. I'll move it on to you, Adam, for anything else for what's next.
Great stuff, Matt, and thank you everybody for those great demos and all the great details. So we do have, as I mentioned before, this is part of an ongoing series of webinars looking into VoltMX Go. The next one will be coming up in a couple of weeks, September 13th, getting started with Volt Iris and Foundry, some more overview of those VoltMX capabilities that you get with VoltMX Go. And again, you can click on that QR code if you're not registered for this series already, or you can share that with your colleagues. The other thing that is getting very close to being ready is the ability to try out MX Go on the HCL Sophie platform. This means you don't need to go and download and install all of VoltMX yourself. You'll be able to try it on our system. You'll get to get hands-on with a First Touch app, with Foundry, with Iris, and really get to play around with it yourself and see how it can work for you in your specific situation. So we'll have more details coming on that soon, but we're getting close to being able to launch that. And with that, well, let's open it up for questions and answers. As a reminder, you can go post your questions if you haven't done so already over in the question box in the webinar platform here. So please go ahead and do that. We've got our first question here. Let's have a three-part question. How does one log into Foundry? Do you have a URL for that? And does it require an entitlement? And actually, I will take the first part of that in the reverse order. Does it require an entitlement? If you have a license for VoltMX Go, that will come with an entitlement for Foundry. So the VoltMX Go includes entitlement for Foundry, Iris, all of VoltMX, as well as all the capabilities of Domino CCB and the connectors that are unique to the MX Go offering that some of which we've gone through here today. So that will give you the entitlement for it. When I turn over to one of our engineering team to talk about logging in and what that looks like.
Hey, this is Rusty. I'll take that question. So if you want to log into Foundry, in our in the MXGo product documentation, and I know like if you're looking at the first touch tutorial section, it does describe the URL that you would use to log into Foundry. And with the very first time you log in, you're actually going to be asked to set up an administrator ID. And then once you do that, you can log in with that ID.
Very good, thank you. We've got some questions about recordings and the first few webinars here. Yes, this is recorded. You will get a follow-up email with a link to the recording when we're done. And that should also include information about how you can go back to the first few in the series here. And we can make sure that you have access to that information. Another question, can I rerun the design import tool to update my MX application?
So I'll take that one, Adam. So what would be done there? If you definitely can. So we've done a couple of things. So if you rerun the same application, it will update your Foundry application with the newest values and what you've actually selected there. If you wanted to select more things to be imported. However, it would overwrite, not overwrite, I'm sorry, add a copy of what you did inside your same application that you had there. So it kind of do a dashboard one. So what you'd want to do is you'd actually want to create a new project and then do that as well. We're working on modifying that and updating that in future releases. But right now you definitely can do that. It will not create more Foundry applications, but it would update those and allow for you to use this as well. I hope that answers your question.
Great, thanks, Matt. Another question here, are there trainings for VoltMX apart from the ones provided on the HCL portal? So we've got a couple of things here that are available inside of the Iris application itself. Are in the side navigation, you'll see a link to something called hikes. And these are guided tours that will take you through getting familiar with the Volt Iris user interface and actually going through and building out a functioning application and then continuing to enhance it with new features or new capabilities as it guides you through more and more advanced capabilities. So that is one way to do it. There are also a number of tools or instructions and labs available on the HCL site. So we do have a number of resources available from an education standpoint. We also have, our services team is also available to, on more of a one-on-one basis to offer training if you have things specific to your situation. And we do have the opportunity for virtual classes as well as hands-on classes and workshops if you have a team of people that want to come up to speed on VoltMX. So a lot of opportunities there for how to do that.
And not to jump in here, Adam, but there's also the VoltMX Academy, or I'm sorry, the HCL Academy, which has VoltMX courses available. There actually is a VoltMX certification that you can have for administrators that you can actually go ahead and take the test and grab as well.
Great, yeah, those are great resources too. Thanks, Matt. Here's another question. Are there any plans to make the First Touch wizard work for other NSFs? The wizard would be extremely helpful for us to easily set up Domino REST API for a particular NSF.
Yeah, I'll take that, Adam. We are looking into providing other samples, but if you're looking at doing that for your own NSF, that would be what design import is designed for. So design import is basically you can take any NSF that you have and import that into Iris, and it'll set up the information for you so that you can start developing your app.
Okay, great, thank you. Here's another question about the REST APIs in Foundry. Can other applications not built by Iris connect to the Domino APIs provided through Foundry?
So I'll go ahead and answer that one. This is Michael Alexander. And yes, other applications can certainly call the Foundry endpoints that expose Domino REST APIs. They can call either directly the Domino REST APIs or through Foundry, taking advantage of the ability to augment and manipulate, even integrate other services or do workflow there.
Great, thank you.
You can actually use the integration services from Foundry to send JSON requests back and forth to the Domino REST API as well.
Yep.
Very good. We have a question about more features coming for design import and the other pieces we see here. What can we expect in terms of the near-term roadmap for design import and for some of the other capabilities in MXGo?
Matt, do you want to talk a little bit about what we're looking to deliver shortly?
Sure. So within design import, we're pulling in some of the agents. We're trying to pull in as well any formula language that you actually have in your fields inside of Domino to actually be able to include those based on if you've attended the formula language webinar or not, but be able to pull those into the Rosetta JavaScript APIs. So you'd be able to use formula language as well as Lotus script via a plugin that we're going to be delivering shortly. To be able to put those things into your applications. We also are looking into rich text and multi-value to be able to pull those things as well and assimilate those widgets that we see inside of Iris.
Great, thank you. We have a question about licensing. Does VoltMX Go require additional Domino licenses? VoltMX Go does include the licenses for the capabilities that are in the Domino CCB bundle today, a product today. So if you have Domino license already, if you have Domino CCB, when you move up to VoltMX Go, you do not need to acquire anything else. It includes the licenses you need for VoltMX, as well as the Domino licenses that you would need. Let's see, other questions coming in here. I see some more questions, kind of continuing questions about setting up the Domino REST API and how to go about doing that, or where there might be documentation or things to make that easier. Ryan, is there anything you can speak to more on that side of things in terms of what resources people have to get the Domino REST API set up?
So for the Domino REST API, the documentation that I showed earlier is actually the best place to learn more about it. And yeah, I think that's where, that's where all of the Domino REST API related stuff are posted. So it's a living documentation, so it's being modified and updated whenever there are changes or whenever there's a need. So yeah, it's really the best place is to go to the documentation.
And Adam, I'm not sure if that was the same question I'm looking at here for configuring the Domino REST API for design import. For design import, want to make sure that your Domino REST API is properly set up. So the schemas and scopes need to be configured to be accessible for the design import wizard application. Now, there's a couple ways you can do that. You can actually go in there and you can actually assimilate or create a schema and scope yourself, or you can use the quick configure inside of the Domino REST API to dynamically build all those things for you. That would create the applications as well as put all your forms and fields into that application. You want to make sure you also have the mode of DQL, which is Domino Query Language, added to that for the same forms and fields that you have built there. I hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Matt. Any last questions here? I think we've answered all the ones that have come in here. So if you have any questions, you can go and put them in. Again, I'll make a plug for the upcoming webinars. When you registered for this one, I believe it registered for all of them, but please share the link with colleagues or others that you work with that might be interested in this. And yep, we will have a number of sessions coming up for those of you attending CollabSphere next week, the user group event there. We do have a number of sessions that we'll be holding on VoltMX Go. So if you're there, please take a look, please look out for them and come join us there. And we'll have more time to go into all of these aspects and really drill into deeper. You'll have a chance to meet with the team in person. So if you will be there, please do stop by. And with that, I will thank you all very much for coming. Thank you again to our speakers and our great engineering team for all of their work in this great release and in sharing the details here. And I look forward to speaking to you all again soon. Thank you very much and have a great day.